Thunder cracked outside the glass walls of the penthouse. The storm was raging, but it had nothing on the chaos inside the room. Ethan Maddox, billionaire, tech genius, and the kind of man who never got surprised, stood frozen in place. His glass of aged whiskey slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor, sending amber liquid in every direction. Standing across from him, the woman he had paid $50,000 to pose as his wife for the month. Ava was trembling. Her eyes weren't on him. They were on the man who had just walked in. Gray-haired, tall, with the same piercing blue eyes as Ava. The man who had once tried to ruin Ethan's empire. Ava's voice cracked as she whispered, "Dad." Ethan's head turned so slowly it felt like the world was dragging in slow motion. "Dad," he repeated. Robert Langston, his most hated rival. The man who once tried to take Ethan down in the boardroom and nearly succeeded. The man Ethan had sworn he'd destroy, even if it took a lifetime. And this woman, this perfect stranger he thought he'd hired off a casting list to fool investors, was his daughter? Ava was crying now. Robert's mouth was wide open. Ethan, he was silent, but his mind was screaming, because everything had just changed, and it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It had all started 3 weeks earlier. Ethan Maddox was rich. Not just any kind of rich, the kind of rich that made people nervous around him. He was 37, with a steel jawline, sharp cheekbones, and the kind of eyes that didn't blink often. He had made his billions designing AI-powered security systems and selling them to governments around the world. The press called him the Ice King because nothing ever seemed to move him. But this time, Ethan had a problem. A big one. The Maddox Foundation Gala was coming up. A massive event where investors, world leaders, and billionaires gathered once a year in Manhattan to celebrate Ethan's achievements. And more importantly, to seal deals worth hundreds of millions. And this year, one of the biggest investors was a traditionalist tycoon from the Middle East. The man had one very specific condition for his investment. Ethan needed to show family values. He believed business wasn't just about profits. It was about legacy, about stability, about home, which meant Ethan had to show up with a wife. The problem? Ethan wasn't married. He wasn't even dating anyone seriously. Love had never been his priority. Business was. Control was. Efficiency was. Women had come and gone, but none of them lasted longer than a few months. So, for the first time in his carefully planned life, Ethan did something impulsive. He made a call to a discreet agency, the kind that catered to the ultra-elite, the kind that could find you someone to walk red carpets, smile for the cameras, and pretend to be your soulmate for the right price. He needed someone classy, elegant, smart enough to play the role. They sent Ava. She walked into his office the next day in a navy blue dress, heels that clicked across the marble floor, and a soft but confident smile. She looked around the room like she belonged there. And for a moment, Ethan thought this might actually work. She was 28, with long brown hair, soft curls that looked effortlessly styled, and green eyes that studied him carefully. She didn't stutter, didn't flirt, didn't try to impress him. She just handed him a one-page resume that outlined her acting background, some basic personal info, and a promise to keep everything professional. They agreed to terms. She would be his wife in public, at the gala, at a few important dinners. Just enough to convince the investor that Ethan was a family man. $50,000. No physical contact unless requested. No press interviews without his approval. Simple. Easy. At least, that's what he thought. The first 2 weeks were smooth. They practiced their story. How they met. How long they'd been married. Inside jokes. Photoshopped honeymoon pictures. Even a few real ones. Ethan had flown them to Rome for a weekend just to take convincing couple photos with the Colosseum in the background. They laughed more than he expected. She was funny, and she didn't fake her smiles. Ethan found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. He didn't like that. He had a rule. No real feelings in fake arrangements. But Ava had a way of getting under the skin. It wasn't long before things got complicated. They were at a charity dinner one evening, mingling with guests, pretending to be the perfect couple. Ethan was wearing a black tuxedo. Ava was in a deep red gown that made half the room stare. They clinked glasses, smiled for cameras, played their part. Then, during dessert, Ava leaned in and whispered, "There's a man at the far table staring at me." Ethan turned. The man was tall, well-dressed, gray at the temples, powerful energy, the kind of person Ethan usually noticed right away. But this man had gone unseen until now. Ava's fingers trembled slightly as she held her fork. Ethan asked, "You know him?" I think he looks like someone I dreamed about when I was a child." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked at him, eyes suddenly distant. "I was adopted. I never knew my real parents. Just flashes. A man's voice. A ring he used to wear. That man. At the table, he has the same ring." Ethan's stomach tightened. He looked again. The ring. A heavy silver band with a dragon carved into it. He knew that ring. He had seen it up close before. On the hand of Robert Langston, his old enemy. A man who had once tried to bankrupt Ethan's company with a fake data scandal. A man who had vanished from public view years ago after being disgraced in the business world. And now he was back and staring at Ava. The night ended early. Ethan pulled her aside before leaving and said, "I want to check something." "What?" "Just some background on you." "Don't worry. It's just a precaution." She didn't argue. That made him more suspicious. Back at the penthouse, Ethan couldn't sleep. He called in a favor from a private investigator. The next morning, he had a file. He stared at the papers, his blood running cold. Ava Langston, born in Vermont, adopted at age 3. Biological father, Robert Langston, the very man who had nearly destroyed Ethan. That afternoon, Ava entered the penthouse, smiling, holding coffee for them both. "I brought the caramel, one you like." Ethan threw the file onto the table. She blinked. "What is this?" "You tell me." Her hand shook as she picked up the paper. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear, Ethan, I didn't know." He didn't believe her. Not until the door opened behind her, and Robert Langston walked in. His voice was soft, cracked. "Ava." The coffee cup slipped from her hand. "Dad." Ethan's heart thundered, and that's when the storm outside roared even louder, just as Ava collapsed onto the floor. Ethan lunged forward just in time to catch Ava before she hit the marble. "Ava, hey, stay with me." Her face had gone pale, her eyes fluttering shut as if the shock had been too much to handle. Ethan eased her onto the couch, panic slicing through his normally calm exterior. He could hear Robert Langston's footsteps approaching from behind, but Ethan didn't take his eyes off Ava. "Don't touch her," Ethan growled without turning. "I wasn't going to," Robert said, his voice hoarse. "She fainted." Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he pressed his fingers to Ava's wrist. Her pulse was fast. She stirred. A minute later, her eyes opened slowly, dazed. "You okay?" Ethan asked, leaning close. I think so," she whispered, blinking up at him. Then her gaze shifted. "Wait, was that real?" She sat up fast, but Ethan steadied her. Robert had stepped closer now, but he kept his distance like someone approaching a sleeping lion. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I didn't even know you were alive." Ava stared at him like he was a ghost. "I don't remember you," she said slowly. "Not really. Just fragments. Why did you leave me?" "I didn't," Robert said. "You were taken. Your mother, she left with you. Disappeared. I looked for years. I thought you were dead." Ethan stood and faced him now, his jaw tight. "You expect us to believe that. I don't expect anything from you, Maddox," Robert said. "But I came here for a reason." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You broke into my penthouse." "I was invited," Robert said, glancing at Ava. She looked confused. "What?" "Your agency, the one that hired you for Ethan. It was a front. I funded it." Ethan's face twisted. "What the hell are you talking about?" Robert sighed, rubbing his temples. "You were always 5 moves ahead, Ethan. I knew you'd never meet me willingly. So I planted Ava. I just didn't know she was my daughter until tonight." Ethan's head was spinning. "You planted her?" he repeated. "I knew you were looking for someone to pose as your wife. The investor, the gala, your reputation. I knew all of it. I needed a way in. I created a fake talent agency and sent Ava in. But I didn't know who she was. I swear on everything." Ethan stared at him. "I don't believe you," he said coldly. Ava turned to Robert now, tears brimming. "So this was all fake? Me being here? Meeting him? You used me." Robert's voice cracked. "I didn't know, Ava. I swear. I saw your face on the agency list, and picked you because you looked familiar. I didn't even think it could be you. But when I saw you tonight, you tried to destroy my company, Ethan said. You nearly ruined my life. And you destroyed mine, Robert shot back. Don't pretend you're the victim. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a blade. Ava stood shakily. I can't be here. Ethan and Robert both stepped forward. Wait, Ava. Don't, she said, holding out a hand to both of them. I don't know who either of you really are right now. She turned and walked out of the penthouse, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then Ethan turned slowly to Robert. If you came here to make peace, you're a fool. I didn't come for peace, Robert said quietly. I came for the truth. Get out, Ethan hissed. Robert left without another word. The moment the door closed, Ethan poured himself another drink, but he didn't touch it. He just stood there, staring at the spot where Ava had been. His mind replayed everything. The fake agency, the job offer, the weekend in Rome, the way she laughed, the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. Was all of it a lie, or had they both been used? Ava didn't know where she was going. She just walked. The wind was bitter outside, cold and sharp like her thoughts. She wandered down the sidewalks of Manhattan, weaving past flashing lights and honking taxis, her heels clicking like gunshots. She felt like she couldn't breathe. Her whole life, she'd carried a hole inside her, a missing piece where a father should have been. And now that piece had a face, a name, a man who had tried to ruin the only person who'd ever treated her with genuine care. Was it all a trick? She stopped near a park bench and sat down, hugging her coat around her. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. Where are you? She stared at it for a long time before typing back. I need time. Please don't follow me. She hit send, then powered off the phone. For the next few days, Ava disappeared from Ethan's world. And in that time, things started falling apart. The investor from the Middle East caught wind of the rumors. Someone had leaked that Ethan's marriage was fake, that the wife he'd paraded around was hired. It made headlines. Maddox's marriage a lie, billionaire's wife a paid actress, empire of ice melts under scandal. The investor pulled out. And just like that, Maddox Industries lost a deal worth $300 million. The board was furious. Stockholders panicked. Ethan's top advisors were demanding answers. But all Ethan could think about was Ava. He needed to find her, not just because of the scandal, not because of the deal, because he missed her. She had made his world feel real for the first time in years. He didn't care if she was Langston's daughter. She was more than that, and he needed to tell her. 3 nights later, Ava returned. It was past midnight when she knocked on his penthouse door. Ethan opened it fast. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked tired, but still beautiful. Can I come in? She asked softly. He stepped aside without a word. She walked past him, stood in the middle of the room, and turned to face him. I believe you, she said. I believe you didn't know. I didn't, he said. She nodded. But it doesn't matter, does it? She added. What do you mean? I'm still his daughter. You're still his enemy. That's never going to change. Ethan walked closer. It doesn't have to matter. You're not him. But I'm tied to him. You're also tied to me. Silence. Their eyes locked. Then, slowly, Ava reached in her purse and pulled something out. A flash drive. I found this in my adoption records. It was hidden in the back of a sealed envelope. I think it's from my mother. She said if I ever found my real father, I should give this to the man who destroyed him. Ethan froze. He took the flash drive. What's on it? I don't know, she said, but her voice was shaking. Ethan turned toward his laptop and slid the drive in. The files loaded instantly. There were video recordings, financial statements, internal memos, whistleblower testimony. It wasn't fake. It was proof. Proof that Robert Langston had never tried to destroy Ethan out of spite. He had been set up by someone inside Ethan's own company. Ethan stared at the screen, and the walls around his mind began to crack, because the real enemy was someone much closer, someone inside his empire, and he had just handed them the perfect weapon. Suddenly, all the lights in the penthouse went out. The screen went black. Ava gasped. Then the fire alarm began to scream. The blaring sound of the fire alarm ripped through the silence like a siren of war. Ethan shot up from the laptop, his heart thundering in his chest. The entire penthouse was plunged into darkness, save for the faint red glow of emergency exit lights flickering on near the stairwells. Somewhere below, an automated voice boomed through the building. Please evacuate the premises immediately. This is not a drill. Ava clutched Ethan's arm. What's happening? She shouted over the alarm. Ethan's mind was already racing. Fire alarms didn't go off in his building, especially not without a cause. The penthouse had its own power grid, its own fire prevention system, its own lockdown controls. This wasn't an accident. Someone triggered this, he said grimly. They're coming for the drive. The flash drive. He yanked it out of the laptop and stuffed it into his jacket pocket. We have to go. Now. Grabbing Ava's hand, he led her across the room. The penthouse elevator was down. Of course it was, so they took the stairs. 18 floors down. Ava's heels clacked loudly against the concrete steps, but she didn't slow. She kept up with him, breathless but determined, her fingers clenched tight in his. As they descended, Ethan's thoughts spun like a storm. Who knew about the drive? No one. Not even his head of security had seen it yet. Unless the agency, the fake agency Robert had created. Someone there, or someone watching it. Someone who didn't want the truth coming out. By the time they reached the lobby, the air smelled faintly of smoke. Not real fire, but the chemical kind like a security fog system meant to drive people out. Other tenants were already in the street, wrapped in robes and confusion. Security officers stood outside the front entrance, checking residents and trying to manage the chaos. Ethan didn't stop. He pulled Ava into a waiting black SUV parked discreetly at the curb. The driver, Andre, one of Ethan's few trusted bodyguards, was already in the seat, engine humming. Drive, Ethan barked. Get us to the downtown vault. Andre nodded and pulled into the street. The SUV tore through the rain-slicked roads, tires slicing through puddles as Ethan watched the city blur past. He glanced at Ava, her face pale but composed. She hadn't said a word since they fled the building. You okay? He asked. She nodded slowly. This is bigger than I thought. It always is. They didn't speak again until the SUV pulled up in front of a gray building nestled between two skyscrapers. No signage. Just a small metal door, a keypad, and a single red camera above it. Andre stayed in the car, while Ethan and Ava entered. Inside was a narrow hallway that led to a reinforced vault door. Ethan punched in a 12-digit code, scanned his retina, and pressed his palm to the biometric scanner. The vault opened with a hiss. He stepped inside with Ava behind him. Rows of metal shelves lined the walls, filled with black cases, hard drives, and physical documents. Ethan opened a secure safe and placed the flash drive inside, locking it with a new code. Now, he said, exhaling, we wait. Let them think it's gone. Ava sat down on a bench beside one of the shelves, her shoulders slumping. Ethan, she said quietly, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know. I just wanted a job, to pay my bills. I didn't know I'd get caught between you and him. He sat beside her. I don't blame you. She looked at him. You don't. He shook his head. I blame the person who's been playing both of us. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, do you think it's someone in your company? I don't think, he said darkly. I know. He stood, pacing. There's only one person who had access to the investor list, who knew I'd be looking for a wife, who knew I'd use a private agency instead of going public. Ooh, Vincent, your chief operating officer? Ethan nodded. He was there when Robert tried to take me down. He was the one who presented the false documents that convinced the board to turn on Robert. I didn't question it back then. I thought Robert was guilty, but he wasn't, Ava said slowly. Ethan met her eyes. No, he said. He was set up. She swallowed hard, which means my father was innocent all along. Ethan nodded, and that changed everything. By dawn, they were back at one of Ethan's hidden properties, an apartment deep in Tribeca, off the books, known only to two people, him and his late brother. He let Ava sleep in the bedroom while he stayed awake, going over the files from the flash drive. He'd made a backup before locking the original away. He watched the videos, read the statements, and saw it all clearly now. Vincent had orchestrated it. He had used Robert as a scapegoat to cover a massive embezzlement scheme. Ethan's own empire had been bleeding money for years, and Vincent had managed to hide it using shell companies and falsified tech failures. Then he fed Ethan the lie that Robert was behind the sabotage. It wasn't just betrayal, it was treason. By morning, Ethan had a plan. But before he could act, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He answered. Mr. Maddox, a distorted voice said, "If you want her back alive, bring the drive to the West Docks by midnight." His blood ran cold. "What are you talking about? Who is this?" The line clicked dead. Ethan turned toward the bedroom. Ava was gone, and there was a note on the bed. 2 words, written in rushed handwriting. "Help me." The docks were empty and silent under the moonlight. Ethan stood alone, the flash drive in his pocket, a gun strapped under his coat. He could hear the waves slapping against rusted boats, the faint creak of ropes swaying in the wind. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. Vincent. He was dressed in black, smiling like a snake. "I told you, Maddox," he said. "Too much heart makes you stupid." "Where is she?" Vincent gestured behind him. Ava was tied to a metal chair, blindfolded, a gag in her mouth. "She's alive for now." Ethan's hand twitched near his coat. "You played me for years," he said. "Used me to build your fortune." "You used me," Vincent snapped. "You were nothing before I helped you. I made you, but you couldn't see it. You gave all the credit to Robert, your golden enemy, your rival. But I was the real genius. You're a parasite." Vincent laughed. "I'm a survivor." Then he pulled a gun from his belt and aimed it at Ava's head. "Now hand it over." Ethan's heart raced, but his eyes were locked on Ava. And in that split second, he made his decision. He pulled out the flash drive and threw it into the water. Vincent's eyes widened. "You idiot." While Vincent was distracted, Ethan dove forward. The gun went off. The shot echoed through the night. Ava screamed behind the gag. Ethan tackled Vincent, both of them crashing to the ground, struggling in the dirt and broken concrete. The gun skidded across the dock, and then, just as Ethan grabbed it, Vincent reached into his coat and pulled something else. A detonator. He grinned. "If I go down," he whispered, "we all go down." He pressed the button, and the warehouse behind them exploded. The explosion ripped through the night with a roar so loud it swallowed every other sound. Flames erupted behind the dockyard warehouse, sending debris flying like a storm of knives. The shockwave knocked both Ethan and Vincent off their feet. The metal container beside them groaned and toppled over with a deafening crash. Ethan hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. For a moment, everything was light and noise and fire. Then, darkness. When his vision cleared, he was flat on his stomach, coughing through the dust and smoke. His side screamed with pain. The flames were spreading fast, turning wood and metal into burning wreckage. And through the haze, "Ava," he croaked. She was still tied to the chair. It had fallen sideways, landing just feet from where the fire was crawling across the dock floor. Her hair was tangled, the gag still in her mouth, eyes wide with terror. Ethan stumbled to his feet, ignoring the pain. He limped toward her, dragging himself through shattered boards and burning cinders. His fingers trembled as he yanked the gag from her mouth. "Ethan," she gasped. "Behind you." He turned just in time. Vincent charged out of the smoke, face bloodied, a jagged piece of steel pipe in his hands. He swung. Ethan ducked. The pipe missed by inches. The 2 men slammed into the dock floor, fists flying, elbows cracking. Ethan's adrenaline pushed him beyond the pain, beyond the fear. He had to end this. Vincent roared like an animal and tried to stab down with the pipe. Ethan caught his wrist and twisted. There was a sickening crunch. Vincent howled. Ethan rolled him over and slammed his fist into Vincent's jaw again and again until the man went limp. Ethan stood over him, breathing hard. Then he ran back to Ava, knelt beside her, and began cutting her ropes with the broken edge of the pipe. Her hands came free first, then her legs. She threw her arms around him, coughing through the smoke. "We have to go." He nodded. They stumbled away together, dodging falling beams and leaping over flames, until they burst out of the dockyard and into the night air. Sirens were already screaming in the distance. Fire trucks, police. Too late to stop what happened, but just in time to see who survived. 2 hours later, Ethan sat in a sterile hospital hallway. His hands were bandaged. There was dried blood under his fingernails. His suit was torn, soot-stained, the cuffs singed. But he was alive, and Ava was resting in the next room. The explosion had taken out most of the dockyard warehouse. The police had arrested Vincent, unconscious and burned, found just feet from the center of the blast. They were already preparing charges: attempted murder, arson, fraud, conspiracy. The list would only grow. But Ethan wasn't thinking about any of that. He was staring at the flash drive. The one he had thrown in the water? Not real. He had switched it before leaving the vault. What Vincent had seen hit the ocean was a decoy. The real one? Still in his pocket. Ava stirred in her hospital bed as the nurse stepped out. Ethan entered quietly. She smiled when she saw him. "You look awful," she whispered. He sat beside her. "You should see the other guy." They both laughed softly, the sound fragile but real. Then Ava grew quiet. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer at first. He looked out the window at the rising sun. "I've already sent the evidence to the board," he said. "By noon, Vincent will be exposed. Everything will change." She nodded. "But us," she said gently. "Where does that leave us?" He turned to her. "I don't care who your father is, or what happened before. All I know is I trust you. And if you'll let me, I want to keep whatever this is. Real this time." Tears welled in her eyes. Even after all of it, the lies, the secrets, the danger. He leaned in, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Especially after all of it." She smiled, and in that moment, something fragile, something powerful, sparked between them. Not fake, not forced, something real. But before either of them could say more, Ethan's phone buzzed. A new alert. He opened it and froze. The subject line read, "Urgent. Robert Langston declared missing." Ava saw his face change. "What is it?" He handed her the phone. Her fingers trembled as she read the message. Robert Langston had vanished. Hours after Vincent's arrest. No one knew where he'd gone. And the last known footage was him entering Ethan's building alone, just minutes before the explosion. Ava looked up at Ethan, her face pale. "You don't think he started it?" "I don't know," Ethan said slowly. "But if he's still out there, he's not running. Then what? He's planning something." Ava stared at the window, her thoughts racing. Because if Robert Langston was alive, then the real war had only just begun. 3 days later, the city had returned to its usual chaos. But inside Ethan's mind, nothing had returned to normal. Robert Langston was still missing. No calls, no messages, no sightings. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. And Ethan didn't like unsolved mysteries. He stood in his office, high above Manhattan, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows while the morning news played behind him. The dramatic fall of Vincent Hallberg, former COO of Maddox Industries, continues to make headlines. Investigations into corporate espionage and attempted murder are still ongoing, but sources close to the case claim new evidence may link him to crimes reaching back nearly a decade. Ethan muted the screen. Vincent had finally confessed, at least partially, but when questioned about Robert Langston's disappearance, he gave the same answer every time. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Ethan didn't believe him. Not for a second. There were too many pieces that didn't fit. Robert had shown up the same night the flash drive surfaced. Then, hours before the fire, security cameras caught him entering Ethan's building, alone. No one had seen him leave. But Robert was too smart to get caught in someone else's trap, which meant he wanted to disappear. But why? "Ethan," said a voice from the doorway. It was Ava. She walked in wearing a navy blue coat, her eyes tired but clear. She'd been staying in one of Ethan's hidden apartments since the night of the fire, avoiding press, resting, healing. He turned to face her. "I found something," she said, holding up an envelope. It was old and worn, yellow at the edges. It was taped under the dresser in my old apartment. I never noticed it before. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single photo, black and white, a baby girl in a hospital blanket. Ava, held by a man whose face was unmistakable, Robert. On the back was a handwritten message. "If they come for me, find the mirror." That was it. Ava whispered, "What does it mean?" Ethan stared at the photo. Then something clicked. The mirror. Ava tilted her head. You know what it means, don't you? He nodded slowly. There's a property, he said, an estate Robert used to own in the Catskills. He sold it years ago, but I'd bet anything he still has access. It had a giant mirror hanging over the fireplace. Custom built. Hollow. You think he left something there? I think he's waiting there. The drive to the Catskills was long and quiet. Mountains loomed in the distance, and snow flurries danced across the windshield. Ava stared out the window, her thoughts far away. Ethan was focused. He had called in a security team, but only Andre followed at a distance in a separate car. He didn't want too many eyes on this. The estate was hidden at the end of a narrow, winding road. A massive stone gate stood closed, vines creeping along its edges. The lock had been recently used. Ethan broke it. The SUV rolled up the cracked driveway, tires crunching against old gravel. The house, if it could be called that, was more like a fortress. Stone walls, tall windows, wooden shutters sealed tight. They stepped out into the cold. This is it, Ethan said. Inside, the air was dry and still. Dust covered most surfaces, but the fireplace was clean. Used. And above it, the mirror. A towering, rectangular thing with gold trim and a dark, glassy sheen. It stretched nearly to the ceiling. Ethan walked straight to it and placed his hands on the edge. Then he looked at Ava. Help me. They pressed against the frame, and with a soft groan, it shifted, revealing a narrow compartment built into the stone wall. Inside were files, photos, hard drives, blueprints, and a burner phone. Ava picked it up. It's on. The screen lit up with a single new message. I'm not hiding. I'm watching. Do not trust Ethan Maddox. She froze. Ethan, he read it over her shoulder, his brow furrowed. What is this? She asked. Why would he say that? I don't know, Ethan muttered, but something inside him twisted. He opened one of the folders from the hidden compartment. It wasn't about Vincent. It was about him. Ethan Maddox. Photos of him at business meetings. Email printouts. Financial reports dating back years. All with notes in Robert's handwriting. And beneath it all, one file labeled Project Echo. He opened it. Inside were blueprints for a device Ethan had developed years ago. His first successful AI-powered surveillance system. But it was different. Modified, with additions Ethan never approved. Ava stepped closer. What's Project Echo? Ethan's mouth was dry. It was meant to monitor public security threats, terrorist plots, cyber attacks. But this, he pointed to the modified schematics. These changes mean it could also be used to spy on private citizens, even control other systems remotely. She gasped. You mean? It could take over entire networks, traffic systems, police drones, banking records. But I thought you created it. I did, Ethan said slowly. But someone altered it, released it before I approved. I shut the program down 5 years ago. Ava's voice shook. You think Robert blames you for what it became? Ethan nodded, and for the first time in a long time, he doubted himself. What if Robert wasn't trying to destroy him? What if he was trying to expose him? Later that night, back in the city, Ethan sat alone in his study while Ava slept in the guest room. He opened a hidden safe behind the bookshelf and pulled out a small metal device. Project Echo's core. The prototype. He had kept it even after canceling the project. He powered it on. A soft blue light blinked to life. And then, the screen projected a live map. Every camera in Manhattan. Every network. All accessible. His breath caught in his throat. The system was still active, even though he shut it down. Someone had kept it alive. Then the screen glitched. A new message appeared. We're watching too. Ethan froze. Then the lights in his apartment flickered. And outside, on the rooftop across the street, a red laser that hovered on the window. Just before the glass shattered, a bullet flew past Ethan's shoulder and embedded in the wall behind him. He dove to the ground. Sirens screamed outside. Alarms blared. The windows cracked. Ava ran out of the guest room, her eyes wide with horror. Ethan, he grabbed her and pulled her behind the couch. We're not safe here anymore. She looked at him, trembling. Then where do we go? And he answered without hesitation. To the one place they'll never expect. Where? He met her gaze. Robert. Because if they wanted to survive what was coming, they would have to find the man who vanished and finally learn the truth that started everything. The private jet cut through the night sky like a knife through velvet. Ethan sat at the edge of his seat, fingers drumming on the armrest as the clouds rolled past the window. Across from him, Ava stared out into the darkness, her thoughts unreadable. They hadn't spoken much since leaving Manhattan. There hadn't been time. After the sniper shot shattered Ethan's window, he'd activated the emergency exit protocols embedded into the building, flooding the hallways with lockdown foam, disabling elevators, and triggering an automated escape tunnel beneath the foundation. From there, he and Ava had taken an unregistered vehicle to a private airstrip upstate, and now they were heading to the one place Ethan swore he'd never go again. Geneva, Switzerland. More specifically, a safe house buried beneath the old quarters of an abandoned hotel in the Alps. Robert Langston's last known hideout before his fall from power. You really think he's there? Ava asked quietly. Ethan nodded. He's a chess player. Always has been. The Catskills were the distraction. He wanted us to find that flash drive. That message. All of it. But he left that mirror clue because he wanted to draw us deeper. So what's his endgame? Ethan sighed. To make me doubt myself. Question what I know. Then, show me something I can't deny. Ava turned toward him. He said not to trust you. Ethan flinched, only slightly. I know. She looked down at her hands. Should I? He looked her in the eyes. No, not yet. But when this is over, you'll have your answer. They landed just after dawn. The air in Geneva was sharp and cold, the sky a soft gray. A second SUV met them at the airfield, driven by a ghost from Ethan's past. Sasha Delacour, a French-Israeli intelligence officer turned road data broker. Ethan had once saved her life during a Black Ops extraction. She owed him, and she paid her debts. She offered a nod as they climbed into the vehicle. I assume you know someone's tracking your biometrics? Ethan raised an eyebrow. They got a lock on your heartbeat 5 minutes after you entered JFK airspace. Government-grade satellites, repurposed. Someone with very deep access. Vincent's people? Maybe. Or someone who's using Vincent. Sasha glanced at Ava. This her? Ava nodded slowly. Sasha gave a small, cold smile. You're braver than you look. I've had practice. They drove through winding mountain roads for hours until they reached the edge of a glacial ravine. A crumbling hotel loomed above, its broken windows dark like dead eyes. This is it, Ava asked. Not the hotel, Ethan said. Beneath it, he and Sasha led Ava through the ruins, past collapsed stairwells and crumbling wallpaper, until they reached a service elevator shaft that led nowhere, or so it seemed. Ethan pried open a panel in the wall and typed the code into a hidden keypad. The ground rumbled. Then, slowly, a section of the floor descended like a platform, revealing a tunnel bathed in blue light. They followed it. At the end stood a metal door. Ethan hesitated, then pressed his palm to the reader. The door hissed open, and there he was, Robert Langston, alive, wearing a gray coat and gloves, standing behind a curved desk littered with monitors. His hair was silver now, his beard neatly trimmed, and in his hand was a glass of dark red wine. Welcome, Ethan, he said. Ava. Ava froze in place. You're alive. I am, he said gently. I had to be. Too many things left unfinished. Ethan stepped forward, tense. What is this? Robert gestured to the screens. Live feed from around the world. Surveillance networks. Trade systems. Emergency alerts. Ethan's own Project Echo stretched across global infrastructure. You said I betrayed you, Ethan said. But you've been using my system. Robert raised an eyebrow. Your system was hijacked long ago, before Vincent, before you even realized it. He walked toward one of the monitors and tapped on it. A stream of data appeared. Transactions, code, internal memos, all tied to a secret division inside Maddox Industries, a department Ethan had never authorized. They call it Division H, Robert said, hidden in plain sight. They've been modifying Project Echo for years, selling access to foreign agents, extremists, even governments. Not for control, but manipulation. Ethan's stomach twisted. Why didn't I know? Because you trusted the wrong people. He turned to Ava now, and I needed you to see it for yourself. Ava's voice cracked. Why didn't you just tell us? Instead of disappearing. Robert looked down. Because the people who run Division H are already inside your circle. You couldn't trust anyone. Ethan clenched his fists. Then help me destroy them. Robert stepped forward, studying him. You still think like a soldier. Straight lines. Objectives. But this war isn't fought with bullets. It's fought with secrets. He pulled a chip from his coat pocket and placed it on the table. This is their kill switch. But if you use it, everything collapses. Their network. Their assets. Every agent. Every sleeper cell. It will expose them all. Then give it to me, Ethan said. Robert stared at him. I'll give it to her. Ava's eyes widened. Me? You're the only one left I know won't be corrupted, Robert said. Not by legacy. Not by power. You were born outside all of this. And now you can end it. Ava slowly reached for the chip. Then a deafening explosion shook the entire chamber. The ceiling cracked. Dust poured from the vents. Sasha yelled, "They found us." Ava turned, terrified. How? Robert's voice was calm. Because someone led them here. Ethan's mind raced. Andre. But Sasha was already checking her gear. No, she said grimly. Me? She turned and drew a pistol, pointed it at Ethan. Ava screamed. You were always predictable, Maddox, Sasha said, her voice cool. You saved me once, but I never stopped working for them. And now I need the girl. And the chip. Robert stepped forward. Touch her and I'll... Sasha didn't blink. She fired. The bullet struck Robert in the chest. He collapsed, blood blooming across his coat. Ava shrieked. Ethan lunged, but Sasha spun around, gun trained now on Ava. Give me the chip, or she dies too. Ethan froze. Everything moved in slow motion. Robert bleeding. Ava crying. Sasha waiting. Ethan's voice was a whisper. You don't want to do this. But Sasha only smiled. I already have. And she pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked like lightning in the small chamber. Ava flinched, but no pain came. No impact. No blood. Sasha blinked. The gun had jammed. In a heartbeat, Ethan launched forward, slamming his shoulder into her chest. The force of it sent her crashing backward against the steel wall. Her pistol clattered to the ground. Sasha recovered quickly, swinging a vicious punch that grazed Ethan's jaw. But he didn't slow. He tackled her again, fists flying in a blur of rage and precision. She landed a knee to his ribs. He grunted, but he kept going. They fought like trained wolves, fast and brutal. But Ethan had more to lose. He grabbed Sasha's arm, twisted it behind her back, and slammed her into the table. She struggled beneath his grip, snarling. Where's the rest of your team? Ethan shouted. Already here, she spat. And suddenly, gas canisters rolled into the room through the ventilation shaft. With a soft hiss, thick white smoke flooded the chamber. Gas! Ava coughed, covering her face. She crawled toward Robert's still body, tears streaking down her cheeks. Dad, wake up! He was barely breathing. His pulse was weak. His eyes fluttered open just for a moment. Ava, he rasped. Take the chip. She grabbed it from the table just as Ethan yanked Sasha's gun from the floor. He grabbed Ava by the wrist, dragging her toward the back wall. There's a maintenance tunnel, he shouted. Smoke filled their lungs. Sasha tried to follow, but Ethan fired a warning shot into the air. The bullet cracked through the lights above, sending sparks raining down. Try it, he growled. Then he and Ava vanished into the tunnel. They crawled for what felt like miles through the narrow space, the heat of the explosion and gas behind them like a beast on their heels. The walls pulsed red with emergency lighting. Finally, a hatch opened. They burst out into the snow, gasping for breath. They were high in the Alps now, just outside the eastern ridge of the compound. The cold bit at their skin, but it was clean, safe air. Ethan turned back just in time to see fire consume the hidden bunker entrance. Sasha's betrayal, the trap, Robert's final stand. It was all crashing down. He turned to Ava, who was sobbing into her hands. I tried to save him, she whispered. I did. I know. Ethan said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. He saved you. She held up the chip. He wanted me to finish it. But what if I'm not strong enough? You are. Ethan said. You've already made it this far. Ava looked at him. Her eyes, red and glistening, searched his face. I need to know, once and for all, what? Were you part of Division H? Ethan hesitated. Then, slowly, he shook his head. No, but I built the system that made it possible. That's my sin. Ava stared at the chip, then stood. We ended. By the next morning, they were back in the city. Ethan's name was all over the news again. First as a victim, then a suspect, then something in between. The blast in Geneva had made headlines around the world. Swiss authorities called it a terrorist incident. Sasha's body wasn't recovered, but her face was leaked to the public. Her betrayal had stunned even the intelligence world. Meanwhile, Ava and Ethan worked in silence inside one of Ethan's off-grid tech vaults. No cameras, no signals, only cold servers, blank screens, and silence. The chip was loaded into a secure drive. Ethan typed furiously. This code will initiate a full data purge across every node connected to Division H. All their proxies, all their access points, and the system itself. He hesitated. If we flip this switch, Project Echo dies with it. Ava nodded. Good. Ethan looked at her. You sure? She was. So he pressed the key. The screen flickered, then blinked black. 30 seconds later, every satellite link, every drone camera, every Echo stream tied to the corrupted version of Project Echo vanished. Gone. Ava stepped back from the console, her chest rising and falling. We did it. But before either of them could say more, Ethan's emergency phone buzzed. He picked it up. Andre's voice came through, urgent. We have a problem. Ethan stiffened. What kind? There's a video. Someone leaked it to every major outlet. It's spreading fast. A video of what? You. Ethan's blood ran cold. Andre continued. It shows you in a private meeting 5 years ago, talking to a man in the Middle East about Project Echo, offering it for sale. Ethan's heart dropped. That never happened. I believe you, Andre said, but it looks very real. Deepfake. Had to be, but the damage was done. As Ethan turned to Ava, her face pale with shock, the television in the corner switched on automatically. The video was already playing, and the voice that came from the screen was his own. Project Echo is unstoppable. You want control? You want power? I'll give it to you for the right price. Ava covered her mouth. Ethan, it's fake, he whispered. I swear. I know, she said, but her voice wavered. Across every screen, the words burned. Ethan Maddox, the man who sold the world. And suddenly, the world turned against him. The world turned. Fast. Within 24 hours, every news outlet across the globe had picked up the deep fake video. Ethan's reputation, already bruised, was now in full freefall. Board members resigned. Investors withdrew. Government contracts were frozen. People who once smiled at him from across champagne galas now deleted his number. The wolves were circling. Inside the safe house, Ethan sat at the edge of a long steel table, his hands clenched into fists. Across from him, Ava paced the floor, the dim light catching her. The video is flawless, Andre said from the corner, scanning frames on a side monitor. AI-stitched lips, real voice inflection. They even copied your micro-expressions. It's a deep fake, Ethan said low and hard. And they released it just after we killed Project Echo. They anticipated the move, Ava added. It's retaliation. No, Ethan muttered. It's a checkmate. They don't need Echo anymore. This was always about discrediting me before I could expose the truth. Andre looked up. We still have one move. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What? Andre pulled up a file. There's one node, off-grid, old backup server from the Echo Alpha days. We used it for isolated AI stress testing. Never connected to the mainnet. No one even knows it still exists. Ava leaned in, and Andre tapped the keyboard. It recorded everything, including access logs, timestamps, and synthetic behavior reports. If someone tampered with Echo's base structure, this server will show when and how. Ethan's heart thudded. Where is it? Andre hesitated. Langley, as in CIA Langley. The room went silent. Ava spoke first. You're saying we break into the CIA? Ethan stood. No, We walk in. 3 nights later, Ethan and Ava entered Langley through the front gates. Legally, Ethan had made the call to an old contact, Director Mason Hale, a grizzled agency veteran who owed Ethan more than a few favors from the echo testing phase. Mason didn't sound pleased, but he agreed to a midnight meeting. They sat across from him in a steel-walled chamber deep in the belly of the compound. Surveillance cameras blinked silently in the corners. "You know I should arrest you," Mason said flatly. "You could," Ethan replied, "or you could see the truth." He handed Mason a device. On it, logs, source code fragments, server access records, all pointing to the creation of a deep fake. More importantly, pointing to Division H operatives embedded within global security councils, using Echo as a gateway to influence world affairs. Mason read the data for 10 minutes, then stood, walked to the wall, and pressed a red button. The door locked with a click. "We're not leaving, are we?" Ava asked. "No," Mason said, "but not because you're prisoners." He turned to Ethan. "You were right. Division H didn't just hijack Echo. They hijacked half the global data stream. This," he tapped the drive, "is bigger than any one government." He walked to a secure terminal and inserted the chip. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked. "Burning them down." Within moments, Mason had authorized a top-level sting operation. Over the next 48 hours, joint task forces across 9 countries executed simultaneous raids. Over 50 Division H operatives were arrested. Their accounts were frozen, their backups destroyed. The truth about the deepfake was revealed. Publicly, it was the largest coordinated data takedown in modern history. And when it was over, the world no longer feared Ethan Maddox. They thanked him. Weeks later, Ethan stood before the press in New York City, not as a disgraced billionaire or a man trying to clear his name, but as the whistleblower who exposed the largest cyber conspiracy in history. "The system we created was meant to protect the world," Ethan said at the podium. "But it was manipulated by people I trusted. I let ambition blind me. This can never happen again. That's why today I'm donating every single Echo asset to a new global oversight committee led by independent civilian watchdogs." Cameras flashed. Applause followed. But Ethan didn't linger. He stepped down, walked off stage, and into the cool breeze of Central Park, where Ava waited beneath the shade of a tree. "You did it," she said with a smile. "We did it," he thought. But all he said was, "It's over." She looked at him carefully. "Is it?" He paused, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black box. She blinked. "What's that?" He opened it. Inside was a thin silver ring. "I know it started as a lie," Ethan said softly. "You were paid to be my wife, and I never believed in love, never trusted it. But after everything we've faced, the danger, the fire, the betrayals, I realized something." He stepped closer. "The only thing that ever felt real was you." Ava's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak. She just nodded, and he slipped the ring onto her finger. Months passed. Robert Langston's name was cleared posthumously. He was buried quietly in Vermont, beside Ava's mother, with a single word carved beneath his name: truth. Vincent Hallberg was convicted. Sasha Delacour's body was never found, though whispers of her name occasionally surfaced in dark corners of the deep web. Project Echo was dismantled, its technology recycled for open-source humanitarian purposes: crisis relief, disaster response, and disease mapping. And Ethan Maddox? He left the company, sold his shares, and vanished from the headlines. But those who knew him best understood he hadn't vanished. He'd simply chosen a different life, one of quiet mornings, open skies, long walks in the mountains, and a woman beside him whose love had been the greatest twist of all. Because in the end, the millionaire who paid a stranger to pose as his wife didn't just uncover his greatest rival's long-lost daughter. He found the one person who could see the truth in him, even when he couldn't see it.